This might be part 3. I said last time I spoke, I was talking about this poem by the first Panchen Lama about while we still have some choices left. And I wanted to speak about the lamrim a little bit. So the part of the poem that makes me think of this is the part that the title comes from, where it says, "The time is now while we still have some choices left. Don't leave fruitless apples never picked. Give life some meaning and devote yourself single-pointedly to something pure that you can accomplish and look back satisfied." And then the other part of the poem that fits in is where it says, "Pack some supplies that will never run out." So this, to me, just brings me to the lamrim completely, because it's so full and rich. You can find things there where you can accomplish something and look back satisfied. And so even the structure of the lamrim, and what it really makes me think of is this outline that Venerable Chodron made, that where it tells us what, like these aspirations that we want to develop. Well, we don't have them right off the bat. So we actually have teachings to help, and meditations and contemplations to do that actually help us to develop aspirations. So it's taken for granted that we even don't necessarily know even how to listen to the teachings. So there's teachings about how to listen to the teachings, which I personally found very inspirational. So once you have developed an aspiration, then there's more teachings and meditations to do to actually accomplish those aspirations. So in the lamrim, there's the 3 scopes, and they have, Venerable kindly made this chart that we have on the web that shows how, what meditations you do to develop aspirations and what meditations you do to accomplish them for each of the 3 scopes. But, thinking about something that's doable, I think what really made me appreciate this was, I think you mentioned some months ago that everyone has a different way into their religious practice. So there may be something in the lamrim that speaks to you, and that can be your entrance. And as you understand the lamrim fully, which is the gradual path to awakening, the teachings all put in order by Atisha, and then written on by Lama Tsongkhapa and other great teachers. But once you understand the whole structure of it, you'll see how they actually all are interrelated, so that you may enter one way, but it will take you to the other places if you can have a feeling of the whole structure itself. So one example of that might be something like, maybe in your life you've struggled with anger. And so then you start working on calming your anger and seeing that, well, first even seeing that it can be, it's not like a given. You can develop an aspiration to rid yourself of anger. And why would you come to that place? Because you've learned about the nature of the mind. And so once you have an idea of the nature of the mind, then you see, well, okay, I don't have anger all the time. It's not a part and parcel of who I am. So, and then you can start learning about methods to rid yourself of anger. So in all of these ways of seeing that there are aspirations to develop and then methods to accomplish them, to me is a great benefit, and something that we pack with us and take with us. No one can take that away from you. And hopefully it will continue into the next life. And the other thing I really appreciate about how this is unpacked in the lamrim is that it is continually talking about the advantages and disadvantages of things. And especially in terms of precious human life, it's just like laid out in 3-part harmony about how things to think about so that we actually take advantage of our lives. One of my teachers, Dhammakusho, told me once that if you fully appreciated your precious human life, you could never have depression. And I was always remembered this because, if my mind gets having a feeling of despondency about something, I have in the back of my mind, this isn't necessary. And once when you study and you see the truth of these things for yourself, then you can use those knowing that when these states come up. It's similar to how we've been advised when we, say, take ordination, to remember the mind that got you there. There's a real purity of mind that takes somebody to want to take ordination. Then later on, when things get rough, you can rely on that. You know what a virtuous mind is. And this would be true for anyone. Any kind of virtuous mind that we have, when you have something that really kind of concretizes it in your life, you can remember and use that to help you when you need it. So like with the precious human life, once you've really thought about it deeply, there has to come a point where you really appreciate your life and you don't take it for granted anymore, and you want to make use of it. So this is all based on, this simple thing of aspiring for something and then having methods to accomplish it. So that partly relates to these advantages and disadvantages. And in that, the other point I think that is helpful is to understand that what this does when we look at advantages and disadvantages, and when we look at things in this way, we start to have an appreciation for things. And that's actually a mental factor in the mind that sees the value of something. And oftentimes, I think that we just can easily go through this world in somewhat of a complicit way, in a way that feels also entitled, but just takes things for granted a lot. And when we have an appreciation for something, it actually gives us it leads to us having aspiration for something. So when we want to develop something within ourselves, by looking at the advantages and the disadvantages and appreciating what's possible, then we'll aspire to do that. So I think that I had mentioned how I liked the teaching so much on the how to listen to the teachings. I found those quite inspirational, and part of it is because they're, like this, coming back to the very first point, something you can accomplish and look back satisfied. I think for me, I realized that I was starting years ago when I moved here, seeing all these faults within myself and not having the tools yet to work with them. But when I would read about how to listen to the teachings, I would realize that, there is a wisdom that comes about from listening. And eventually I'm going to develop this wisdom. And so that for me, that was very encouraging to know that, okay, maybe I'm floundering here and there, but if I stay with this, something good is going to come of this, because there will be a kind of wisdom, even though I might not have the wisdom of understanding the full meaning of something, like which you would get from contemplating things, or then actually having actualized it through the wisdom of meditation. There is a wisdom that comes just with learning and listening. And even with that, what's also encouraging to me is that when they talk about, in the lamrim, they talk about what are the signs of a person who has a lot of learning. The sign is that their behavior is subdued. They have a thing. The sign of someone who has accomplishments of, I think it was meditation, is they've actually gotten rid of the afflictions. When you've realized emptiness, you're actually getting rid of afflictions. And so I think I don't remember that one clearly. The one that speaks more to me is the first one. The sign of someone who has listened a lot and developed that wisdom, I think, is the way I took it, is that then their behavior becomes subdued. Because basically you've looked at the advantages and disadvantages of things, and at some level you've learned how to start to calm your mind, control your behaviors, your actions of body, speech, and mind. So that doesn't take realizations in the sense of subtle impermanence or emptiness or a lot of these higher realizations. These are the things that we can accomplish and then look back satisfied. And they are things that will never run out. They're things that we'll take with us. There's kinds of, I think, wisdom really that we'll take with us, hopefully, to our next life.